What's up, everybody? It is time to talk about and discuss this loaded main card that the UFC has put together for UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. Right now on paper, man, this is one of the greatest main cards the UFC has ever put together. And I'm glad I waited to make this video because we first got hit with the 4 big fights and we just had 2 added to this main card. And the 2 additions are Jeff Neal, Rafael dos Anjos, and Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. And you see the rest of the fights on here. I mean, this thing's absolutely loaded. So in this video, I'm going to go through, I'm going to give an early prediction for each matchup. I'm going to break it down, discuss it a little bit. I'll put the time codes down below, so if there's specific fights you want to hear me discuss, feel free to do that. But let's hop right into this. First, Jeff Neal versus RDA. This is a big fight for both guys, right? Jeff Neal coming off of 2 L's, RDA coming off of 2 L's. Jeff Neal has a ranking next to his name, and this feels like this could be one last push for RDA. And both of these guys, man, like I said, this is must win. 2 L's for both guys. Like this is a great matchup by the UFC because we're going to get a very focused Jeff Neal. We're going to get a very focused RDA because inside the UFC, what we've seen, if you start to head down the wrong path and you stack a couple of L's together, you tend to find your way out of the UFC. And considering both of these guys are older, as much of a legend as RDA is, as great as Jeff Neal has been inside the welterweight division, Father Time starts to catch up. And the question is, who's it going to catch up to? Because I think that we're going to see 2 motivated guys in this matchup. And if I'm going to have to go early prediction here, I think Jeff Neal can get this done. I think he can get this done. I think, look, RDA has the grappling advantage in this matchup. But what Neal brings to the table, good lateral footwork. He has, in my opinion, way better striking than RDA. The boxing is very clean of Jeff Neal. He's got good power in his hands. He's very hard to track down. And he's very good in the clinch. He's good at shucking you off. And I think if RDA is standing in front of him for 3 rounds, it's going to be a problem. I think that the timing, the speed, the movement of Jeff Neal, and you got to keep in mind here, Neal was just in there with Shavkat Rakhmonov, and then he was just in there with Ian Gary, and he was landing good clean shots on both of these guys. And I would like to think if he's landing on these dudes, the young up-and-coming guys in the welterweight division, he's going to probably have no problem teeing off on RDA. Now, if RDA is able to take the fight to the floor, I think he has a lot of success. But Jeff Neal is squirmy, he's strong, he's hard to get a hold of. I think Jeff Neal is going to be able to get this thing done. But again, huge opportunity for RDA, to not only just get a win and get back on track, but get back into the rankings. He's bumped around from lightweight, welterweight. This is a big matchup for both guys considering they're coming off 2 consecutive L's apiece. So big matchup, good matchmaking by the UFC. We move on. We have Lerone Murphy versus Dan 50K Ige. This is great matchmaking. I mean, both dudes coming off of, Dan Ige, he took a fight on, 4 hours notice against Diego Lopez, who's an absolute savage inside the featherweight division. Basically had no camp for that. Was preparing for another fight and ended up stepping in on 4 hours notice for this on International Fight Week at UFC 303. How badass is that? Goes in there, goes the distance with Diego Lopez, is actually outstriking Diego Lopez later in the fight. Had a lot of great moments in there. And the fight before that, he goes out there, starches Andre Fili. So that's the one that we really can kind of take something off there. And then we have Lerone Murphy, guy out of the UK who's just a promising young prospect who gets that big Apex main event moment against Edson Barboza, which is that real big first huge test for Lerone Murphy. Passes with flying colors. Goes in there against one of the most, I'd say one of the most dangerous strikers that we've ever seen inside a division in Edson Barboza. Goes out there, stands toe-to-toe with him. Basically, the boxing discrepancy of Edson Barboza is kind of really what was exploited by Lerone Murphy. But Lerone is a very well-rounded fighter. He's got good timing. He's got good speed. He's good all around on the feet. But Dan Ige is dangerous, man. He's got crazy power in his hands. And if you're asking for an early prediction here, I think I got to go Dan Ige. I think I have to go Dan Ige. There's something about a guy stepping in on, in a huge spotlight at UFC 303, taking a fight on 4 hour notice like that, like something just badass like that tends to elevate a fighter, in my opinion. And I think Dan Ige, that high guard style, he has a very good ground game. He's low, he's stout, he has true one-shot knockout power. He has very good boxing of his own, which is going to be very important coming into this fight because Lerone Murphy has outstanding hands, and he's a very good overall fighter as well. I think that this fight plays out on the feet, and I really think that Dan Ige's power is going to be the difference in this matchup. I think that he's able to finish Lerone Murphy and get him out of there. I think that going in there against Diego Lopez on short notice, coming out there off the KO over Andre Fili, he's got a great camp with Coach Eric Nixick behind him. I think that Dan Ige is able to get this thing done. But nonetheless, I think someone gets finished in this matchup because I don't see any way in which that they're going to clash in this fight that we see a judge's scorecard in this matchup. Nonetheless, great matchmaking by the UFC. I love this fight. I know Ige wanted to be on the Sphere, but this is a huge card, so I think that they did right by him by adding him to this card here. Let's move on. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. Now, this is where we get into the meat and potatoes of the big fights on the card, man. Early prediction, I got Magomed Ankalaev. Now, a lot of people are so distracted by the fact of he's not getting a title shot against Poatan, and they're protecting Alex, and all these different things. Look, Magomed Ankalaev is coming off of a win over Johnny Walker, right? And who hasn't beat Johnny Walker at this point, right? So I'm not saying that Ankalaev doesn't deserve a title shot, but to say that, oh, he has to have it. He has to have, like, not really. Not really, right? And then you can make the argument, well, you know, who's going to fight for it? And that's a great question because we really don't know, because if Ankalaev's not fighting for it, and then we have Alexander Rakic here, who he's coming off an L to Yuri Prochazka, he's not fighting for it, so it leaves the light heavyweight division in a weird position. But this is a very interesting matchup, An early prediction, I'm going Ankalaev, and the reason for that being, Alexander Rakic has really, really good leg kicks. He's a big, strong guy at light heavyweight, but the issue that we've seen from him, to me, is in the boxing. And I think Magomed Ankalaev, right behind Alex Pineda, is the second best striker in this division. I know that Jan Blachowicz was able to, you know, take him to a draw, basically, and it was a very close fight and this and that. But it was those leg kicks of Jan Blachowicz, the calf kicks that were giving Ankalaev some problems. If he knew how to deal with a calf kick, I don't think he finds himself in that scenario. I think that the boxing of Magomed Ankalaev is very crisp. It's very clean. The way he came out against Johnny Walker with a very much like a Thai influence in his stance, I think he's going to be prepared for the leg kicks. But Alexander Rakic is a heavy hitter with the legs, man. He's got very heavy leg kicks, but he does not have a lot of power in his hands. And I don't think that Rakic has the grappling to trouble Magomed Ankalaev, because Ankalaev has very good grappling of his own. I don't think Rakic is going to be able to outbox him. So really, his only way to victory is to sit on the outside and spam kicks. And I just think Ankalaev is not going to respect the power of the hands of Rakic. He's just going to march him down and get him out of there. So I really think we see Magomed Ankalaev come out there and starch Alexander Rakic. Look, on the Abu Dhabi card, we know the UFC, like they're putting Magomed Ankalaev in a position to get a big win here. Rakic is coming off of a loss to Yuri Prochazka where everything was going right for Rakic. He was fighting the perfect fight against Yuri. He was battering his legs. He was doing everything right. He was moving around on the outside, avoiding a brawl, and Yuri just got to him. He got to him. Rakic just, eventually just started to run out of gas a little bit. Yuri was not going to be denied that night at 300. He just kept walking through the shots. And then eventually, what hurt him? The boxing. And I think if you're looking at a guy in the division who's going to have an answer for the leg kicks, is going to not be worried about any grappling threat of Alexander Rakic, and is going to be able to outbox him, that has sharp hands, good speed, and power, that's Magomed Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev comes out of here with a first or second round nasty knockout over Alexander Rakic. But either way, it is going to be a fun fight. Moving on. We have Gane and Alexander Volkov. Interesting fight, interesting matchup, because these are two guys that are two tall guys in the weight class that are known for their kind of pinpoint, tit-for-tat type of striking style. And we've seen them fight before, and we saw Gane, the first time around. We saw what he was able to do with Volkov. But I think that we see a rather different fight this time around. This is going to be 3 rounds. And what we've seen from Volkov throughout the course of the past few fights, he's just gotten better. We saw what he just did to Sergey Pavlovich. Now, Sergey is a very dangerous guy at heavyweight, don't get me wrong, but Gane's a very different puzzle. He's very nimble, he's very fast, and he doesn't move like a heavyweight. He moves like a lightweight. Like everyone talks about how Aspinall moves like a lightweight, which he does. Gane moves very much like a lightweight as well. He's very kind of sideways, karate, just picking and poking at you. And I do think that we're going to see a little bit of a different adjustment from Volkov this time around. I think he's going to look to try to mix in the grappling, because we have seen that his control in terms of the grappling has very much improved, and his long-range striking has improved. It's a little bit more sharp. It's a little bit more crisp, as we saw against Sergey Pavlovich. He can switch stances, the leg kicks, the jab. But again, it changes a little bit against Gane, considering Gane is tall, he's rangy, where Pavlovich is just kind of a big, stocky dude who looks like he only boxes and lifts weights at this point. So it is going to be a very interesting matchup to me, because we got two tall guys. They have the pinpoint back and forth, pretty striking type of style. But I think the difference in this matchup is going to be that Alexander Volkov is going to try to mix in the grappling. And I think that he has some serious power in his hands. And obviously he's at heavyweight, but I think that he's starting to sit on his shots a little bit more. That win over Pavlovich is going to give him some confidence. I think Volkov can get this done. I think he could get it done. Gane's been away for a while. He's filming movies. He's, a Hollywood star or something now. I think Volkov is locked in, and this is a huge, huge opportunity for him, because if he could go out there and get through Gane, he's knocking on the door for a potential title opportunity. So this is a big opportunity for both guys, because again, the UFC loves Ciel Gane. They love this guy. They like the pack of hot dogs on the back of his head or something. I mean, they are obsessed with Ciel Gane. This guy can lose a fight, win a fight, and then he's fighting for a title the next time around. So Ciel Gane, they've shown he doesn't have to do much to get a title shot. There's a lot at stake in this matchup, but I think that Volkov is able to get this thing done. But either way, going to be a fun fight. Moving on. The co-main event. Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev. Now, this fight was supposed to take place back in June, and I was borderline on, I was about to cry when this fight fell through, because I had been waiting months for this fight to happen. The minute that they announced that this fight would, it was funny. The UFC's like, we're going to Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi, and we have a card, and then it's like, oh wait, no, that's not the card. And there were rumors that there was a shit card that they put together, and all of a sudden you see Robert Whittaker versus Chimaev headlining a fight night, and then you saw Pavlovich versus Volkov, and it's like, well, that's a complete 360 or 180. So I'm like, first of all, great card, but then Robert Whittaker versus Chimaev, like, that had so many question marks above it, because it's like, look, we haven't seen Chimaev fight a legit 185er yet, a guy that's at the top of the heap, that's accomplished, that it has a very well-rounded skill set, like a guy like Robert Whittaker. And Chimaev unfortunately got very ill. He had to pull out of the fight. So enter Ikram Aliskerov. And I had said, look, everyone was trying to sell the narrative that, look, Ikram, he has a chance against Whittaker and this and that. And I'm like, look, Robert Whittaker is going to destroy this dude. Ikram is nowhere near on the level of Khamzat Chimaev. I know they fought each other before, but at this point in time in their career, Khamzat is significantly better than Ikram Aliskerov in terms of the striking and the grappling. And I'm like, look, Robert Whittaker, he's not going to respect this guy in the striking. And he's just going to, I think he's going to have a field day. Ikram over parries and this and that. And you saw Robert make easy work of Ikram. But I want to point out, that was an angry Robert Whittaker in there. That was a guy that was not bouncing around on the outside trying to play the points game like we normally did. His feet were dug in. He was planting his feet, and he was like, I'm knocking your ass out. And I think that attitude that he had was what he was coming into the Chimaev fight with. He felt disrespected, like, you're building this guy up. I'll take the fight because it's a challenge. But I think Robert Whittaker wanted to prove a point. And I honestly, I picked Khamzat to win. I thought Khamzat was going to be able to get it done. Early thoughts, man, I think Robert Whittaker gets this done off of what he did to, not so much for what he did for Ikram, the attitude, what I've been waiting for Robert Whittaker to do is stop floating around so much and relying on playing the points game. Dig your feet in, Robert. You have power, and you saw him do that to Ikram. You saw him do it to Ikram. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. If Chimaev is not able to get a hold of Robert Whittaker, overwhelm him with the grappling in the first round and get him out of there, Robert Whittaker is going to touch this dude up on the feet. He just is. And I know that Khamzat has good power in his hands, and I like watching the guy fight. He's very entertaining. He has outstanding wrestling. His striking is underrated, in my opinion. I just think the time away, and just it seems like every time Khamzat takes a step forward, he takes a few steps back. And to no fault of his own, it's his health and things like that. But it makes me nervous because Robert Whittaker's been very active lately. He's going in there, and I know that he's getting stopped by Dracus du Plessis. But that, again, that's Dracus du Plessis. That's the world champion. And I think that Khamzat and his team are going to try to implement a similar game plan. Look, we got to pressure Robert Whittaker. We can't give him the space to operate. Switch stances, and let's fight behind the jab. And that power jab is what DDP utilized to put Robert Whittaker down. And I think that Khamzat is going to try to utilize a similar game plan. The question is, if Khamzat's not able to get that finish in the first round, what happens? And I just see nothing shy of a disaster. I see nothing shy of a disaster because make no mistake about it, if there was no grappling coming into this fight and it was only kickboxing, only striking, Robert Whittaker absolutely picks apart Khamzat Chimaev, in my opinion. Absolutely picks him apart. But because of the grappling element, Khamzat does have crazy power in his hands. I could see scenarios where he wins. But right now, early thoughts, I'm leaning towards Bobby Knuckles. But main event, Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway. This is the best fight the UFC can put together inside the organization right now. I've been saying this for a long time. Stylistically, I'm not talking pay-per-view sales, big fight feel. I'm not talking about that. It does have a little bit of that. I'm talking about stylistically. This is one of the most unpredictable in terms of making a prediction and picking the correct outcome here that I think we can get inside the UFC. I mean, there's so many ways that I can see this fight playing out. I mean, you have Ilia Topuria, who I've been saying for the longest time is the best boxer inside the UFC. His traditional boxing skills are absolutely outstanding. The head movement, the high guard, the defense, the shoulder roll, the stance, everything about Ilia Topuria is very, very dangerous when it comes to the boxing. He has good grappling of his own. He's got good submissions. He has it all. And not to mention, he used to fight at lightweight. So the power of this guy is different. And we just saw him, back in February go out there against Alexander Volkanovski to dethrone him to win the title. Volk was looking good in the first round. Ilia Topuria started to throw some of those calf kicks, hindered the movement of Volkanovski, came out aggressive in the second round and was able to get him out of there. And then on the other side, you got Max Holloway, who moves up to 55 to take on Justin Gaethje, where everyone was like, Gaethje's going to Tony Ferguson him. He's going to end Max Holloway. And I sat up here for months and told you, Max Holloway is not only is he going to beat Gaethje, he's going to finish him. And it was because of the speed, it was because of the strategy, and Max Holloway is just a technically better striker than Gaethje. And you saw an evolution in Max Holloway. We've seen it over the past few fights, his willingness to take a backward step and not always have to come crashing forward, utilize good lateral movement, switch stances. But what we saw at 55 against Gaethje that is going to be hard to see happening at 45 was his willingness to stand in the pocket and exchange with Gaethje. And the reason for that being, it was not as much of a weight cut. He felt bigger and stronger up at 55. I don't know that he's going to feel that way at 45. And I've said, guys, time and time again, if this fight was happening at 55, I pick Max Holloway pretty much all day long. I think that he can utilize the elusiveness. He can sit on some shots here and there. But at 45, man, like you just went up to 55, you put on all this size to get up there, and now you're going to come back down to 45. Sometimes it works out. We saw Volkanovski go up to 55, and then we saw him come back to 45 and run through Yair Rodriguez. But Ilia is not Yair Rodriguez. Ilia Topuria, I've been saying, man, I think he's the most dangerous featherweight we've seen in a long time. I mean, the power in this guy's hands, he has way, way, way better striking in terms of the boxing than Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is a nasty leg kick, but he's reckless on the feet. He's over-swinging on shots, leaving himself open. There's no openings with Ilia Topuria. He's got that good high guard. His shoulders are, his elbows are tucked in. It's hard to hit him to the body. He keeps slowly moving forward. His head movement is on point. And if Max Holloway comes into this fight and just tries to pick and poke box with Ilia Topuria, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. And what I don't like for Max in this fight is when we saw him against Arnold Allen and then we saw him against the Korean Zombie before he moved up against Gaethje, these shots, they have a lot more of an effect on him at, when he was down at 45 than they did back a few years back. And that seems to be, when the weight cut starts to get to you a little bit. And we saw at 55 when he took a shot from Gaethje, he ate it for lunch. It was like, it barely fazed him. I know he got dropped at one point, but he was eating shots from Justin Gaethje like it was nothing. And to come back down to 45 and try to do the same thing that you did to Gaethje against this guy, Topuria, is a recipe for a disaster. So early thoughts, I still think Max Holloway can get this done. I still think Max Holloway can get this done. That is my early thought is Holloway. But he's going to have to fight him like he fought Arnold Allen. He's going to have to be on his bike. He's going to have to be utilizing, fighting out of both stances. He's going to have to be sticking and moving. He's going to have to mix it up. He's going to have to mix in leg kicks. He's going to have to throw kicks to the body, head kicks. And he's going to have to throw a lot at Ilia Topuria, because if Max has the idea of just coming in here and straight out boxing with Ilia Topuria, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a problem, because Ilia Topuria has a significant power advantage over Max Holloway. Because if you take Justin Gaethje and you put Ilia Topuria in there at 55, I think Topuria knocks him out inside 2 rounds. I think Topuria gets it done faster, because Gaethje would put himself in harm's way. Topuria would march him down, and that's just... Topuria is devastating. He's absolutely devastating, and he has the grappling. I would say he probably has the wrestling advantage in this fight. I don't think he's going to look to utilize it. I know some people are mentioning, well, maybe Topuria looks to grapple. Maybe he looks to grapple. I don't know that we see that, because when you're a striker and then you start to implement grappling into a fight, you tend to tire yourself out more than normal. So I don't know that we see that. I think Topuria comes into this with supreme confidence. He's saying he's going to be the first guy to knock out Max Holloway. I'm going to say this. If there's ever been a threat to and guys, I'm the one that sat up here and told you Gaethje was not going to do he wasn't going to do much harm to Holloway. I'm telling you right now, if there's someone that is going to knock out Max Holloway, it's Ilia Topuria. It's this guy. This is the most dangerous fight that Max Holloway has had in his entire UFC career. But on the flip side, I think that this might be the hardest fight that Ilia Topuria has had since he has been in the UFC. That's why I love this matchup. I see a number of ways that this could go down. I can see Ilia getting caught by Holloway. I can see Holloway getting caught by Ilia. I can see Holloway outscoring him for 5 rounds. I can see Topuria outboxing him for 5 rounds. I can see so many different scenarios, but stay tuned on my channel, because we're going to do a lot of film breakdowns and different things for this fight, because this is an incredible matchup. Glad the UFC decided to go this route, because I know that there was some concern on maybe Volkanovski, gets the rematch. But I think we all knew that they were going to try to get this Topuria versus Holloway matchup. But I want to hear from you all down in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, help your boy out. I would appreciate it. See you next time.